I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. This is the Billionaire Brown experience. Let's go.
So today we're going to be talking about, you wanted to touch on step parenting.
Yes.
And you also wanted to talk about the meeting with your dad.
Yes.
Which you just verified you met your dad for the first time at the age of 24?
About 24, yeah.
All right, so what was that? Did you inspire this meeting?
Yes, yeah, I sought him out.
Ah, you sought him out.
Yeah, I sought him out.
Okay, so what was that? Why did you seek him out after 24 years?
Well, to go back a little bit, you know, as a child, you grow up in a certain environment and you don't know you know your environment.
Right.
So I didn't know that I missed having a dad at that age. Mm-hmm. I grew up, my grandmother raised me, aunts and uncles coming in and out of the house. My mom was there occasionally, she was in and out. And I had no idea that I missed a father. I didn't know. I just knew that this was my environment.
Mm-hmm. Wait, no, let me ask you this question. When you were growing up, because you said you didn't know that you missed a father. Yeah. So nobody in your surrounding circle ever talked about your dad?
No, not at all.
Not in a good way or a bad way? Nobody mentioned?
Not at all. I knew his name, and I don't know how I learned his name. Okay. I just knew his name. But other than that, there was no discussion of my dad. I didn't ask about my dad. I just knew that my dad, or I didn't know anything. I was just kind of living in my environment. I knew that my grandmother was raising me. You know, that she was my primary caretaker.
Okay.
You know? However, in the third grade, and I remember this clearly, and I remember my teacher, Mrs. Davis. She was mean.
Okay.
Or maybe I was just bad. I don't know. One or the other. You know, when you're bad, everyone appears mean. You know. But I wrote his name I wrote his last name.
Okay.
His last name is Fontanez.
Okay.
My last name at the time was something completely different. My kids still carry that name. It's Zawalski.
Zawalski.
Yes.
Okay.
But I wrote his name on my paper. I wrote John Fontanez, which is my name now.
Oh, so you're a junior?
No. There's a junior. That's a whole other thing. Okay, there's a junior.
One of those episodes.
There's a junior.
Y'all
yes.
Stay tuned.
So I wrote his name on there, and my teacher, Mrs. Davis, was like, "Who is this?" Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "That's my dad's name." I felt pride. I don't know why. You know, I'm in third grade. I'm what, not 8, 9 years old.
Right.
But I felt pride at writing that name down, and she's like, who is this? I'm like, that's my dad. I don't even know my dad. I'm just like, that's my dad's name. I felt compelled to write it at that moment, and then I never wrote it again. You know, and I guess I didn't think about it much. But when I got released from jail in 1995. I told you I was part of a church.
Right.
In the first episode, we covered how I began to look at the pastor as this mentor, but not only a mentor, a father figure. And I found that I was wanting from him what I guess I missed from having a father. I wanted his attention. I wanted his affection. I wanted his eyes on me. I wanted him to say, "I'm proud of you for anything and everything." And when I didn't get what I wanted, I ended up leaving.
Yeah.
You know, I ended up leaving. But it was while I was in the church that I decided I wanted to meet my dad. In my mind, I just thought, you know what, I'd like to meet my dad. But before I met my dad, I have to take you back and tell you that when I was 5 years old, an aunt of mine worked at McDonald's.
Okay.
And she worked with my dad. My dad and his brother were married to sisters. So it was two brothers married to two sisters.
Are you serious?
Yes. And the one sister, not my dad's wife, but my uncle's wife, worked at McDonald's.
Okay.
And when my aunt had saw the name, she said, "Hey, my sister has a kid by such and such," you know? So when I was 5, they invited me over for dinner. So when I was 5 years old, I was at I was at my dad's wife's sister's house having dinner. So people were aware that I existed.
Okay.
This is why I'm taking you here because when I met my dad, he claimed he didn't know I existed.
Your dad?
My dad. So I'm taking you back so that people knew that I existed.
But he didn't.
He claims he did.
Okay.
So anyway, I had dinner. I was 5 years old. I kind of remember some things about it. I know we had lasagna. They're half Italian. The sisters are half Italian.
Okay.
So I know we had lasagna. But I don't remember much else. I just remember hanging out and then I didn't hear anything. Now, when I was running the streets and I was, selling drugs and I was all part of that mess, I have an uncle who was a bounty hunter. My dad's side, my dad's brother.
This is not the same uncle that played the buffer?
No.
Okay.
Another uncle. And I would run into him occasionally just because he was a bounty hunter. He was out in the streets and we'd have brief little chats, but really about nothing. My dad never came up. Mostly he'd be just showing me photos of people he was looking for, asking me had I seen them, And I'm just like, nah, I haven't seen him.
Give me a lead. Give me a
exactly,
lead,
But he knew who I was, and I knew who he was. But my dad never came up. So anyhow, while I was attending the church and I was clean and I was having this other life and I started to yearn for my father. I decided I wanted to meet him.
Okay.
And the only connection that I knew was my uncle, who's the bounty hunter. So I went to go see him. I went to the sheriff's department in downtown Camden, asked for him, and basically, like, probably the first thing that was out of my mouth was like, do you know where my dad's at? And he was like, wait right here. And he went upstairs. Well, I don't know where he went. Now I know he went upstairs. But my aunt, his sister, worked upstairs in the sheriff's department. And she came down. And she looked at me and the first thing out of her mouth was like, I waited 6 years for this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just showing up here. What have you waited 6 years for? Well, it turns out when I was 18, so I'm about 24. I'm actually about 23 because I don't meet my dad until the following year. I'm about 23 years old. When I was 18, I was sitting in the county jail. It was my first arrest for dealing. I got interviewed by someone from probation. They ask you a series of questions, just basic life stuff. Address, name, your birthplace, all that. Parents' names. She asked me my dad's name. I tell her my dad's name.
Fontanez.
Johnny Fontanez. Well, it turns out this person interviewing me is my dad's cousin who works for the probation office. And she goes to my aunt. She's like, I just interviewed this kid that says that, Johnny's his dad. She doesn't give her any pertinent information because it's her job, too.
Right. Confidentiality.
But she says, hey, he lives in Kramer Hill and by such and such, and if you see him, you couldn't miss him. So over the course of the next 6 years or so, my aunt tells me that she's been riding through Kramer Hill occasionally, just seeing if she sees me. Of course, she's never really going to see me because now I'm doing all my dirt in Pollock Town.
Right.
Towards South Camden, Mountie from Avenue and all that.
Dirt meaning drugs.
Yeah.
Using or dealing.
Using and dealing and everything. I'm not in Kramer Hill anymore. I still live there, but I'm not, most of my time is spent
in Pollock.
In Pollock Town. So that's my introduction to my family. This other side, my father's side. And I start...
Do you look like him?
I'm going to tell you about that, too.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started spending a lot of time with my aunt. I'm just hanging at her house. I'm meeting family members, and she's in contact with my father. My father's in Arizona. He's living in Arizona.
Thinking, why did it take a year for you to... I thought he was in New Jersey.
No, he's living in Arizona. He retired there from the Air Force. That's where he was stationed last.
Okay.
And he's living in Arizona.
All right, so at the time when this whole process is happening, he's in Arizona.
Yes.
When did he get to Arizona? Wasn't he he's from New Jersey?
He's from New Jersey, but he's lived several, because he was in the Air Force, he's lived all my siblings, his 4 kids, they're all born in a different state. Pennsylvania, Florida, Arizona, and there's another state. They're all born, because he's traveled, with the Air Force. So the last place he was stationed was Arizona. He retired out there, and that's where he had been living for, I think, the last 12 years or so. So I don't have any contact with him directly as this year progresses. I'm really just hanging with my aunt, getting to know people, meeting people. And that Thanksgiving, 1995, I go to his parents' house, my grandparents' house. And his mother's freaked out. She doesn't want to come out of the kitchen. Like, she just hangs in the kitchen the whole time. And I'm meeting people and I'm talking to people, and it's this whole new, number one, it's this whole new world.
Yeah.
Because what I grew up around was violence. And you couldn't get too many of my family members together without something breaking out. You know, physical violence. But here, I'm at this Thanksgiving feast, and everyone's having a good time. Nobody's fighting, no one's cursing, nobody, you know, there's no brawls going on in the kitchen. You know, like, it's already, I see that there's something different, you know. So anyway, I'm there on Thanksgiving, and I'm looking at the wall of pictures, you know, family pictures, and I'm just kind of scanning the photos. I see my dad with his 4 kids. I'm not in it, but his 4 kids are there. And then I see his graduation picture. And it's this face. It's my face. Like, it's my face, and I'll have to show you the picture. I don't, you know, I'll matter of fact, I'll email it to you so you can see it. And now it's like a car wreck that I can't stop looking at. Like, I throughout the evening, I constantly am drawn back to this picture because it is my face on that wall.
Does any of his other kids look like him as much as you?
They do, in a different kind of way. Just in a different kind of way. You know, I can see them in him, but I feel like we share more of the common features.
Okay.
You know, like as if his features were more dominant in the making of me, and his other kids, it was kind of equal with him and his wife. You know, kind of sort of along those lines. But I couldn't stop staring at this picture. You know, I was just constantly drawn back to it, and it was just a time in my life that even now I feel like I'm like getting ready to start crying. You know, thinking about it. Because it was, before I met him, it was a connection there. That was a connection for me, because I had never seen that before. I had never been this up close to him, and he wasn't there yet. And here I am, this young man at 24, and I'm feeling like a child, you know, like just wanting my dad, you know.
So that increased your want. When you saw that picture, that increased it?
That intensified
it.
It intensified it, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
how much after seeing this picture?
So I met him the following year in the summer. So it was about 8 months.
Okay.
Probably about 8 months went by.
You went to Arizona, or
No, he came here.
For you?
Yes, to meet me, yes.
He came from Arizona to come here? Really?
Yeah, he jumped on a flight. Like, I guess when you're in the military, if a flight is going that way, a military flight, you can jump on it, and that's what he did.
So he wasn't angry. He didn't disown, because I know you. He didn't know that he had. He said he claimed not to have you as a child, but he wasn't like distant. He wasn't like, no, are you sure?
I didn't even talk to him or anything. All the communication was between my aunt and him, his sister and him. The day I met him was the first time I spoke with him, and I don't know why it went like that. That's just the way it went. You know, that's just the way it went. So we. Go ahead, sorry.
So now you meet him.
So yeah, we meet at my aunt's house.
Okay.
She lived in South Camden. Same, his parents lived in South Camden. A lot of the family members lived in South Camden. And we meet out front. And you know, we're about the same height, you know. He's a little bigger than me because he's been retired for a couple of years, so he put on a little weight, you know.
I got you.
He's got long hair, he's balding, he's got long hair, he's trying to hold on to his hair. But the weird thing is we got the exact same shirt on. It's a white, no collar shirt with 3 buttons. It's the exact same shirt. It's the same shirt and the same brand. It's
seriously.
It's this weird occurrence that we still talk about today. Like how does that happen? You know, so it was just a weird. I didn't really read much into it, except that it was just like this weird occurrence that we had the exact same, you know, shirt on.
So did you guys hug?
I think we might. You know what? We might have just shook hands.
Okay.
I don't really recall. And we went into the house, and we sat in the kitchen. My aunt had a tiny row home. She had a tiny kitchen in the back, and we sat across from one another. And I don't remember much of the conversation. I just remember telling him that he didn't owe me anything. I wasn't looking for